Seattle, Washington, where rain taps against glass towers and tech dreams rise faster than the fog. 4 years ago, I walked into Sovereign Analytics with a second-hand briefcase, lukewarm coffee, and the naive belief that merit mattered more than connections. By year 4, I was infrastructure lead, the one keeping every server alive while others posed for LinkedIn photos about disruptive innovation. I truly believed this time would be different, until they handed my life's work to someone who couldn't tell a database from a spreadsheet. That Tuesday started like any other. I arrived early, checked logs, and reviewed backups. Project Obelisk, my 3-year creation, was slated for final deployment. I pictured the launch, the press, maybe even real recognition. Then, Walter Finch, our CEO, strode in with his keynote smile. "I have exciting news," he announced. "Meet Thomas Cross, MIT grad, son of our lead investor Benjamin Cross. Starting today, he's co-leading Project Obelisk." Polite applause. The room went cold, not the shivering kind, but the kind that settles in your chest and stays. Thomas stood, all confidence and bright teeth, talking about fresh perspectives on legacy systems. Walter clapped his shoulder like passing a torch. No one objected. Everyone knew the rule. Money buys titles. I sat silent, no smile, just the tap of my pen on the table. I'd been in rooms like this before, but this time I wasn't unprepared. After the meeting, Walter grabbed my arm. "Randall, bring Thomas up to speed. The kid's got real potential." "I'm sure he does," I said, voice calm, but inside I'd already decided. The game was rigged from the start. Back at my desk, I opened a buried folder. Legal, contracts, vendor access. Inside sat Clause 7C, System Administrator Authority, a safeguard I'd embedded 18 months earlier. Not out of paranoia, but hard-won wisdom. In companies like this, they'll take what you built unless you make it impossible. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe so you never miss another powerful story. And let me know your thoughts on today's one in the comments. I read every message. An hour later, Thomas appeared. "Hey, Randall, Walter says you're the guy who knows everything." "That's what they tell me," I replied. When he left, I sipped my cold coffee. Bitter, grounding. If you've ever poured years into something only to watch it handed to someone because of their last name, you know that hollow, freezing feeling. The next morning, Walter's email landed. "Welcome, Thomas, to the Obelisk leadership team." Leadership team. I wasn't sure I was still on it or already outside looking in. Thomas soon asked for a walkthrough of Obelisk's architecture. I showed him everything: auth protocols, data routing, and failovers. He asked decent questions, but beneath the enthusiasm was the quiet certainty of someone who thought he'd earned his place. He had no idea he was just a bargaining chip between his father and the CEO. That afternoon, Walter called me into his glass-walled office overlooking Pike Place. "Obelisk needs new energy," he said smoothly. "Thomas gives investors confidence." "Confidence," I repeated, "not competence. You'll stay technical lead, keep things stable. He'll handle strategy and external positioning. So I maintain the infrastructure while he takes the spotlight." Walter shrugged. "You understand the business." I walked out past a photographer staging Thomas's "Welcome to the Team" shot, center frame, polished grin. Did anyone remember Obelisk began as a Python script I wrote on a weekend, or the nights I slept at my desk fixing deployments? That evening, I stayed late. My screen glowed. Project Obelisk V4.2, production build. I stared at the screen, motionless. I could have shut it down, walked away, but part of me still hoped hard. Work would eventually be seen. The rest of me knew that hope had died that morning. The next day, I walked into Walter's office while he was on a call. "Trust me, Benjamin, Thomas has got this. He's got vision," he said, back turned. I waited, hearing Benjamin twice more, then knocked softly. He ended the call with, "We'll discuss it more at the club this weekend," and turned to me with a practiced smile. "Randall, what can I do for you?" "I need to confirm system permissions. Who's getting full admin access?" "Thomas, obviously. But you'll still oversee him. You're the one who keeps things running smoothly." Running smoothly. The phrase they use when they want you to carry someone else's weight. Back at my desk, an email from Thomas popped up. Hey Randall, could you grant me access to the vendor management console? Walter said you're the only one with permissions. I smiled. That's correct, I murmured and typed. I'll need to verify contract compliance first. Certain permissions require legal clearance. I hit send, then reopened the legal folder. Clause 7C, System Administrator Authority, sat there quietly, like an armed trap with the safety still on. By Friday, Walter sent a company-wide email titled The Future of Obelisk. He praised vision, innovation, and the next generation. Mentioned Thomas 4 times. Thanked me once. In parentheses. I closed my laptop and leaned back. Laughter echoed from the break room. Alone in the empty conference room, light glinting off the polished table, I felt something I hadn't in 4 years. Calm. I wouldn't argue, wouldn't plead, wouldn't prove myself anymore. They thought they were replacing me. They didn't realize I was the only one who knew how to keep Obelisk alive. That night, walking home through downtown Seattle, I watched interns laugh outside a bar, young and hopeful. I remembered who I'd been 4 years ago, someone who believed talent rises. Maybe Thomas believed that too. He didn't know opportunities here aren't earned. They're traded and often rigged before the game begins. At home, an email from Walter arrived. Thank you for your continued support. I trust you'll ensure everything runs smoothly. I read it twice, deleted it. No reply. The obelisk icon blinked softly on my screen, like a star in the wrong constellation. I shut down my laptop. In the silence, I knew the ending had already begun. Not theirs. Mine. I didn't leave immediately. I needed time to set things in motion and to watch them fumble in real time. After Thomas's introduction, the office changed. People talked louder and worked less. Meetings became stages for his vision. I sat in the back, noting everything he missed, which was most of it. He wasn't incompetent, just inexperienced. He'd never pulled an all-nighter to fix a critical failure or chosen between sleep and a client emergency. And the most dangerous thing, he didn't know what he didn't know. Walter, meanwhile, glowed with borrowed youth, posing for photos beside the new generation, like it might turn back time. For the first month, I stayed quiet. By day, I kept Obelisk stable. By night, I reviewed every contract I'd ever signed. Clause 7C, my exclusive authorized administrator clause, was my lifeline. No one, not even the CEO, could override it without my written consent. When I'd first added it, the lawyer asked, "Is this really necessary?" I said, "Just in case the future turns out less fair than expected." She laughed. I didn't. It wasn't just the contract. I had logs, emails, design docs, everything. Not paranoia, survival. The competent get overlooked, the connected get promoted, and the one who keeps receipts never loses. One evening, Brandon, a senior dev, asked quietly, "Randall, are you staying? Word is Thomas is planning restructuring." I kept my eyes on the monitor. "I'll stay until they decide they don't need me anymore." He nodded. No explanation needed. That weekend, I visited my brother in Portland. He'd baked me a late birthday cake. "Are you happy, Randall?" he asked. I didn't answer. He squeezed my shoulder. "You always said hard work was enough. Maybe people don't see as clearly as you think." I looked at his calloused hands and whispered, "I know." Driving back, one thought repeated, "If they can't see your value, let them see what happens when it's gone." The next week, Thomas launched innovation strategy sessions, buzzwords like optimizing data pipelines, masking plans to dismantle what we'd built. I watched, silent, certain. One afternoon, he stopped by. "Suppliers aren't responding to my emails about vendor access. They only talk to the authorized administrator in the contract. I'll look into it." He left, uneasy. I reopened Clause 7C, still intact, and updated system. Permissions, saving a private backup. That night, Walter sent a company-wide email praising Thomas for bringing innovative energy to the project. The final line read, "I believe that under Thomas's leadership, Obelisk will achieve what we never could before." I sat in the empty office and read that sentence 3 times. He was right. Obelisk had never failed before. In the days that followed, I began quietly extracting everything that was mine: system backups, architectural diagrams, and disaster recovery protocols. I wasn't stealing. I was reclaiming what I'd built. I stored everything on an encrypted external drive, locked with the date I'd signed my first Sovereign Analytics contract. I also created one final document, just a single line of text. Sometimes silence is the loudest exit. I worked as if nothing had changed, but piece by piece I began removing my fingerprints from the machine I'd assembled. Every time someone asked a question, I answered with one word less. Every time they requested help debugging an issue, I pointed them to the documentation instead of fixing it myself. They never realized I was unscrewing the bolts holding the entire structure together. One late night, Walter stopped by. "Randall, I know this transition might feel difficult, but trust me, we're heading in the right direction. You'll see the results." I looked up, meeting his gaze. "I'm not expecting results anymore, Walter." He raised an eyebrow. "No? I just want fairness." He said nothing, only nodded and left. The door closed softly behind him, leaving me alone with the hum of the server fans and the glow of my monitor. I sat still for several minutes, then opened a new email. Subject: Notice of System Administrator Authority. Recipient: Legal Department, Sovereign Analytics. The message was brief and formal. Under Clause 7C of the Vendor Integration Agreement, any changes to operational leadership or third-party representation must be approved in writing by me, Randall Mercer, prior to execution. Any action taken in violation of this clause will constitute a breach of contract. I hit send. No attachments, no pleasantries. And when the email disappeared from my outbox, I knew everything was ready. The moment they tried to operate Obelisk without me, the system would lock itself. No alarms, no visible errors, just one quiet message on every screen. Access denied. I didn't know who they'd call first, Walter, Thomas, or me, but I knew one thing for certain. When they did, I wouldn't be there. A week later, while I kept the company running with the same quiet efficiency as always, Walter and Benjamin Cross, Thomas's father, met at a private golf club outside Seattle. I knew because the executive assistant accidentally CC'd me on the transportation itinerary, as if I were still the one coordinating Walter's schedule. I didn't correct it. I didn't reply. I just filed it away with everything else. Proof of the transactions people prefer hidden. That day, Seattle's sky was impossibly clear, the kind of clarity that only appears before something breaks. Walter wore a navy polo, laughing every time Benjamin swung. They talked about markets, about the next generation, and about Series B funding. But I knew the real topic: Thomas and Obelisk. "Walter, you know I still believe Obelisk can redefine enterprise infrastructure," Benjamin said, lowering his club. "But I need to see a future in it. Thomas can be that future." Walter smiled, adjusting his glove. "You always know exactly what I need to hear. I agree completely. He's got fresh energy and a solid pedigree. Maybe he's the one who'll take Sovereign to the next level." Benjamin gazed across the green and lowered his voice. "If Thomas holds a leadership position, I can guarantee the next funding round closes ahead of schedule. We both win." Walter stayed silent for a beat, then nodded, the kind of nod a man gives when he's just traded principle for profit. Meanwhile, back at the office, I was reviewing quarterly performance metrics. Every number aligned: uptime, client satisfaction, revenue. The Obelisk was more stable than it had ever been. I smiled. Everything was running exactly as I had designed it. Every data stream, every integration point, every failover protocol, all within the system I built. Which meant only one thing: I was the only person who truly understood how to keep it alive. That afternoon, Walter texted me, "Randall, meeting at 5. Need to discuss Obelisk." I didn't need to guess the subject. The conversation at the golf course had ended. Now came the part they thought I'd find surprising. The meeting room on the 9th floor was bathed in harsh fluorescent light. Walter sat at the head of the table, Thomas beside him, and Benjamin by the window overlooking Elliott Bay. When I walked in, the air felt thick, like the stillness after a storm. Walter began, his voice soft in a way that only sounded kind. "Randall, first I want to thank you. Obelisk has come this far because of your work. But to go further, we need fresh direction, new energy. I understand, I said. He tilted his head slightly, surprised I didn't protest. Good, I knew you would. Thomas will take over strategic oversight. You'll continue managing technical operations. So, I handle the hard work and he gets the title, I said quietly. Not bitter, just factual. Walter nodded. That's right, Benjamin added gently. It's about securing the future, Randall. Thomas needs an opportunity and you'll still play a critical role. An opportunity. That word had followed me my entire career, though never in my direction. I looked at Thomas. He was trying to appear confident, but uncertainty flickered behind his eyes. I could tell he wasn't entirely comfortable with the arrangement, but not uncomfortable enough to refuse it. I said softly, Congratulations, Thomas. You're going to need it. Walter smiled. You're a true professional, Randall. I knew. You wouldn't let emotions interfere. Never, I replied evenly. I only do what makes sense. The meeting ended. I stepped into the corridor and Thomas called after me. Randall, he said, voice low, I know this might be hard for you, but I genuinely want to do this right. I don't want to be just someone's son. I turned to him. The overhead light softened his young face into something almost vulnerable. I believe you, Thomas, I said quietly. The problem is, nobody else believes in themselves. He opened his mouth as if to respond, then stayed silent. I walked away, my footsteps echoing down the hall. That night, after everyone had gone home, I reopened the Obelisk system. The code pulsed steadily like a heartbeat. I made a few adjustments, didn't delete anything, didn't sabotage, just added some authentication checks. One of them contained a simple logic gate: if unauthorized, admin, then lock all access. I saved the file, closed the laptop, and turned off the lights. The next morning, the entire company received an email from Walter. Welcome Thomas Cross as the new strategic director of Project Obelisk. Minutes later, the LinkedIn post appeared, Walter and Thomas shaking hands, the company logo gleaming behind them. The caption read, When experience meets the next generation, innovation happens. I looked at the photo, then closed the tab. I didn't need to see the comments to know what they'd say. Inspiring, amazing, perfect partnership, all the hollow platitudes I once believed. For the rest of that week, Walter seemed lighter than air. He walked around the office shaking hands, smiling, and radiating confidence. Around midday, I noticed him leaving early again. Investor meeting, they said. I knew it was another round of golf with Benjamin. As for me, I stayed in my corner, keeping Obelisk operational while everyone else celebrated the future. Late Friday night, I sat alone, staring at the system architecture map on my screen, a web of dependencies, transaction nodes, and automated failovers I'd once been proud of. Now, it just looked like a living organism, massive, intricate, and deadly in the wrong hands. I opened a new email, typed a few sentences, then erased them. There was nothing left to say. All I had to do was wait, because once they tried to run Obelisk without me in the loop, one wrong command, one unauthorized override, the organism would sever its own lifeline. Not because I destroyed it, but because I built it to obey only the person who truly understood it. And that person was never Thomas. 2 weeks after Thomas was named strategic director, the company held an internal launch event for Project Obelisk, the moment that, by every measure of fairness, should have been mine to lead. I still attended. Not showing up would have looked petty. Showing up, at least, let me watch them turn my work into theater. The conference hall was pristine, flowers lining the corridor, the air heavy with cologne and overpriced catering. Walter stood at the podium, microphone in hand, voice filled with pride. Today marks a transformational milestone for sovereign analytics, and leading this new chapter is a brilliant, dynamic talent, Thomas Cross. Applause filled the room. I clapped 2, 3 measured polite taps. Thomas stepped forward and straightened his tie. Behind him, the screen displayed the title Project Obelisk, Redefining Enterprise Cloud Infrastructure. I smiled faintly. I'd written that tagline. I'd created every slide in that deck. But today, I was just another face in the third row. Thomas began speaking, delivering the strategy I'd drafted almost word for word. Obelisk will create seamless integration between distributed systems and centralized analytics. We will. The word we echoed over and over. He spoke confidently, but every sentence felt like a needle prick against my skin. I wasn't angry. I just felt something colder. Emptiness. He didn't understand whose words he was repeating, nor the countless failures that shaped them. When the presentation ended, Walter clapped Thomas on the back, his smile as bright as a camera flash. "Excellent! This is exactly the vision we need." More applause. I stood and slipped out quietly while they posed for photos. Back at my desk, I opened the folder. Contracts, legal, vendor access. Clause 7C, System Administrator Authority, was still there. I reread every line, remembering how I'd built that clause into our integration agreement with Horizon Systems. I'd told the attorney it was for operational security. In truth, it was the only chain protecting what I'd created. I opened another file, Vendor Agreement Renewal, Year 4. The bold text stared back at me. Authorized Administrator, Randall Mercer. Any change of administrator requires written consent from Randall Mercer and vendor legal approval within 30 days. I pressed my lips together, a small gesture, like silently renewing an oath. I knew Thomas would soon need that access, and I knew exactly what would happen when they tried to contact Horizon Systems without me. That afternoon, Thomas stopped by my desk. "Hey Randall, quick question. How do I push the latest build to the production vendor? I can't find the deployment credentials." I looked up, calm. "You can't find them because they're under my authorization. Is there urgency?" "Walter wants to deploy the demo to Horizon Systems before Monday. Then he'll need to go through legal. By contract, I can't release credentials without written approval." Thomas frowned. "But you built this system. Why make it so restrictive?" I smiled. "Because that's how we protect it from unnecessary risks." He nodded, still confused, and walked away. When he did, I opened a new email. To Legal Department, Sovereign Analytics Subject, Vendor Authorization Notice. Internal reminder, under Clause 7C, any transfer of administrative authority or technical asset management between the company and third parties must include written consent from the designated administrator, R. Mercer. No exceptions. I hit send. 3 days later, on Friday afternoon, Walter sent a company-wide email. "I'm thrilled to announce we're entering the expansion phase of Obelisk. Thank you, Thomas, for your creativity and incredible drive." I set down my coffee, reading the message again. It felt like attending my own funeral, without the inconvenience of dying. But I didn't react. I didn't need to. Everything was already in motion. That night, I stayed late and opened the system one final time. I exported the backup data to my external drive, then added one final comment to the core authentication module. Ownership verified by Clause 7C. R. Mercer. When I shut down the laptop, the office lights dimmed, leaving only the screen's blue glow reflected across my hands. Outside, Seattle glittered beneath the rain, as if the whole world was celebrating something I'd already lost. But inside, I felt no tragedy. Only the calm of someone who knows exactly what's about to happen. Tomorrow, they'd run Obelisk without me. Tomorrow, the system will ask one simple question: do you have authorization? And when the answer was no, Obelisk would do exactly what it was programmed to do: lock itself. Not because I wanted to destroy them, but because in my world, justice deserved a little logic too. The following Monday, I went to the office like any other day. But nobody knew it was my last day at Sovereign Analytics. I didn't announce it. I just wanted to leave quietly, the way you close a door after everything worth keeping is already gone. The engineering floor buzzed louder than usual. Thomas stood in the center, directing the Obelisk team as they prepared for the live demo with Horizon Systems. His voice carried across the room, full of adrenaline, like a captain before battle. "Today's the big day, everyone. We're deploying our first production build to the primary vendor." Applause. Laughter, the rapid clicking of keyboards. I stood in the back, arms crossed, watching. It felt strange, familiar, yet distant, like seeing an old version of myself, the one who still believed competence alone was enough. I went back to my desk, opened my email, and typed a few lines. Subject: Notice of Resignation. Walter, I'm officially resigning from Sovereign Analytics, effective 2 weeks from today. Thank you for the opportunity over the past 4 years. Randall. No emotion, no bitterness, just a clean period at the end of a sentence. I printed it, slipped it into a white envelope, wrote "For Walter" by hand, and took it upstairs. When I entered, Walter was on the phone, voice gleaming with confidence. Yes, Benjamin, Obelisk is ready. Thomas is doing great. Today's demo will prove it. I stood there for a moment, listening to his self-satisfied laugh echo through the room. When he finally turned, still wearing that smile, I placed the envelope on his desk. This is my resignation. He froze. What? I'm leaving the company, effective in 2 weeks. He stared at me like I'd just spoken a foreign language. Randall, don't be ridiculous. This is the most critical phase. Obelisk needs you. I know, but it seems the company doesn't. Walter stood, voice tightening. You can't just walk away because of a strategic decision. Thomas is your investor's son, I said evenly. I understand. Obelisk needs fresh perspective, right? He went silent. I stepped closer, meeting his eyes. You know, Walter, you once told me I was the backbone of Sovereign, and now you're building a new structure. But you seem to have forgotten that backbones don't bend. His eyes narrowed. His voice dropped, sharp. Are you threatening me? I gave a small, calm laugh. No. Just reminding you to review the vendor contract before Thomas touches anything. I'd hate to see you run into complications. What contract? Clause 7C, I said as I turned to leave. You'll figure it out. Soon enough. I didn't look back, but I knew he was watching me go. Not like a boss losing an employee, but like a man realizing he'd just lost control of something he thought he owned. That afternoon, Obelisk deployed without me. I sat in a cafe across the street, watching the reflection of the control room lights through the tower windows. Thomas and his team gathered around the monitors, faces lit up with anticipation. He pressed execute, smiling proudly. I could see it all in my mind, the code running, data streaming smoothly, and then, suddenly, stopping. It happened faster than I expected. Less than an hour later, my phone buzzed. A message from Brandon. Obelisk unresponsive. Horizon Systems reporting unauthorized administrator. Thomas is panicking. Walter is calling you. I didn't reply. I just stared out at the street, the sunset washing Seattle in pale gold. The sound of a coffee cup hitting the table felt louder than it should have. Everything else was silent. A few minutes later, the phone rang. Walter. I let it ring until it stopped. Then again, office line, still ignored. On the third call, I picked up. His voice came fast, trembling. Randall, what did you do to the system? Why is the Obelisk locked? Horizon Systems can't log in. They're threatening to void the contract. I didn't do anything, Walter. I just don't work there anymore. Don't play games. What do you want? More money? A title? I can... No, Walter. My voice stayed calm. I don't want anything. I just want you to understand what it feels like to lose control of something you thought belonged to you. Silence. Just his breathing on the other end. I continued, slower this time. You always told me I should learn to respect people with vision. But maybe, Walter, you should have respected the person keeping that vision alive. I hung up. No anger, no satisfaction, just quiet. Because for once, I wasn't the one trying to be heard. The next 3 days, Sovereign Analytics fell, apart. The second vendor, Cortex Integrations, delayed shipments, citing a change in authorized representation. Finance reported penalties. Engineering panicked. Nobody could access the core system. Thomas called 5 times. I didn't answer. On the 6th, a text arrived. Randall, I know you're upset, but please help me understand. I didn't want this to happen. I read it, then put the phone down. He'd figure it out eventually, just like I did. By the 5th day, Benjamin Cross called Walter mid-meeting. I heard later that he shouted through the speakerphone, I invested in your company, not in some kid. How does your system collapse because one employee quits? Walter had no answer, because the truth was simple. He'd lost the only person who knew how to keep the machine alive. That night, I opened my laptop and created a new file. Project Sentinel, a system built to never forget its creator. The glow from the screen reflected off my coffee cup, still warm. In the corner of the West Cafe, a group of students talked about their first startup, voices full of hope. I listened and smiled. I used to be like them, believing fairness was natural, that skill would always be seen. Now I know better. Fairness has to be built, and this time, I'll build it for myself. 3 weeks after I left Sovereign Analytics, Seattle settled into that familiar autumn chill where rain becomes a constant companion. No urgent emails, no emergency calls, no meetings where I nodded through someone else's incompetence. I woke up in my apartment near Capitol Hill, made coffee, and opened my laptop. The screen was blank. For the first time in 4 years, I didn't owe anyone an explanation. Sovereign Analytics, however, told a different story. Word traveled fast in the tech community. A former colleague from operations texted me, "Obelisk is completely frozen. Vendors pulled contracts, investors are furious, and Walter's losing his mind." I wasn't surprised. They were learning what I'd tried to tell them. When you dismantle a system you don't understand, removing one critical component brings everything down. I spent those first weeks organizing my life, then opened a business account. Mercer Solutions LLC, Industry, Cloud Infrastructure Consulting and System Architecture. I smiled while entering the details. In my head, I added a silent motto, helping companies that confused titles with talent. 10 days later, my phone rang. Unknown number. Randall Mercer? Speaking. This is Angela, VP of Engineering at Horizon Systems. I heard you left Sovereign Analytics. That's no secret. Her voice was professional and direct. They're trying to renew our contract, but we can't proceed. They no longer have an authorized administrator. We might need an independent consultant going forward. I took a sip of coffee. I'd be happy to help, provided the contract is signed directly with Mercer Solutions. Naturally, she said. We prefer working with people who built the systems, not those who inherited them. We finalized terms that week. Ironically, my first client was the same partner Sovereign Analytics was desperately trying to retain. Across town, Walter was still pretending everything was fine. I heard he met with Benjamin Cross every morning, insisting the situation was temporary. Obelisk hit a minor technical issue, he'd say. It'll stabilize shortly. Then, an internal memo leaked onto a developer forum. Unable to proceed without authorization from the designated administrator, Mr. Randall Mercer. One small sentence buried in technical jargon. But in Seattle's tech scene, it spread like wildfire. For the first time, my name appeared in industry discussions, not as support staff, but as the architect whose absence brought a company to its knees. That evening, I worked late at my new co-working space. Small office, warm lighting, a window facing the street. I was drafting a proposal for Horizon Systems when my phone buzzed. Unknown number, but I knew who it was. Randall, Walter's voice came through, strained but attempting politeness. We need to talk. I believe we already did, Walter. Listen, I understand you're upset, but the situation is critical. 2 vendors terminated contracts, the system's locked, and investors are threatening to pull funding. I'm not asking you to come back. Just help us resolve the technical issues. As an external consultant, I leaned back listening to the rain against the window. You'll need a new contract. Yes, of course, you can draft whatever. 6-month engagement, fixed rate, 4 times my previous salary, full intellectual property protection under my name. A long pause. Randall, you know the company can't afford that. Then find someone else. If they can unlock the obelisk without me, I'll be genuinely impressed. He exhaled sharply. You've changed. I haven't, I said quietly. I just stopped working for free for people who never valued what I did. I hung up. The next morning, I received a formal email. Subject, consulting agreement accepted. From Walter Finchbody. We accept your terms. Please begin immediately. I read it twice. We accept your terms. Simple words, but they sounded exactly like the apology he'd never say aloud. I started the consulting work remotely, delivered temporary access credentials within 48 hours, and provided full system documentation. Walter offered extended support with premium compensation. I declined. I wasn't returning to a place where loyalty only lasted until the next golf game. The following month, I signed 3 more contracts: Horizon Systems, Cortex Integrations, and a new client, Unified Logistics. All 3 named Mercer Solutions as their strategic partner. My revenue climbed rapidly, but what mattered more was what I'd finally reclaimed: autonomy. That afternoon, Brandon messaged me. Thomas resigned. He said he wanted to work somewhere that valued learning over connections. Walter's barely speaking. The company's downsizing fast. I read it, then archived it, not out of satisfaction, just closure. That chapter was finished. I opened the window. Seattle's wind carried rain and distant traffic, mixed with music from a bar down the block. I poured myself a drink, opened my laptop, and typed on a blank page. People say success is the best revenge, but sometimes it's simply peace. I saved the file. Sentinel, development phase. There was still work ahead, but this time I was building it for myself and nobody else. 2 months after leaving Sovereign Analytics, Seattle settled into winter. Frost lined the streets and the city grew quieter. At my usual cafe, rumors swirled: investor exodus, executive resignations, and Sovereign quietly listed for acquisition. I didn't ask questions. News finds its own way. One morning, Angela called. "Randall, I'm back from the Infrastructure Summit in San Francisco. Everyone's talking about Sovereign, especially Clause 7C. It's become shorthand for never underestimate the person who actually builds things." I laughed softly. They learn eventually. "That's not why I'm calling. Companies want to partner with Mercer Solutions. Dominion Tech's on the list." I paused. Dominion had been Sovereign's largest client, 30% of their revenue. "You're joking." "Not at all. They said they only want to work with the architect who actually designed Obelisk." 3 days later, I met Dominion's leadership team downtown, on the 23rd floor overlooking Puget Sound. The lead executive, mid-50s, sharp suit, calm tone, said, "We respect what you accomplished at Sovereign, even if your departure was unconventional." "I appreciate that." "Obelisk showed promise," she continued. "The execution, we know how that went. Can you deliver better?" I opened my laptop and showed them Sentinel, Obelisk's successor, leaner, more resilient, and built without bureaucracy. Silence followed, then she nodded. "Draft the proposal. We want to begin next quarter." The news spread fast. Former Sovereign architect lands Dominion Tech. A brief trade mention, enough to make Walter's next board meeting awkward. Someone sent me the audio. "You said Obelisk would be operational. Now our biggest client is working with Mercer's firm. Explain that." Walter replied, strained. "We view this as strategic collaboration. Mercer Solutions is an industry partner." "Partner or competitor?" Silence. That evening, an email arrived from an old address, from Thomas Cross. Subject: "I needed to say this. Randall, I'm sorry. I thought I was contributing ideas, but I was just claiming credit for your work. I've left Sovereign. If you ever need help on Sentinel, I'd like to earn a real opportunity, this time based on what I can actually do." I read it, unmoved by anger or sentiment, just quiet clarity. Someone finally saw the difference between entitlement and effort. I replied, "If you're serious, meet me at Mercer Solutions Monday at 9 a.m. Come ready to learn." A week later, we signed 4 new contracts. Sentinel was no longer a concept, it was live infrastructure. I expanded the office and hired engineers, and Thomas showed up. No suit, no smirk. Just humility and a willingness to learn. At lunch one day, he stopped by my desk. "Do you ever regret it?" "Leaving Sovereign?" "No, letting it fall." "I didn't let it fall," I said. "I just stopped holding it up. If removing one person collapses everything, it was never built to last." He nodded and went back to work. By month's end, I was invited to speak at the Pacific Northwest Tech Leadership Summit, Why Walking Away is Sometimes the Strongest Decision. I shared my story. No names, no bitterness, just the truth about knowing when to stop carrying dead weight. Afterward, Angela smiled. You just made half that audience rethink their careers. I don't want them rethinking for me, I said. I want them rethinking for themselves. That same day, Sovereign held an emergency board meeting. Walter was asked to step down. Benjamin Cross pulled his investment. The company was quietly put up for sale. No fanfare, no next-generation press releases, just the quiet end of a company that forgot who kept it running. That evening, back in my apartment, I opened the window. The city glowed below, but inside I watched my screen display one line. Sentinel, deployment complete. All systems active, no revenge, no need to prove anything. Just the quiet certainty that this time, what I built was truly mine. I closed the laptop, made tea, and wrote in my journal, people say success is the sweetest revenge. I think justice is the real victory. Outside, Seattle hummed. Inside, for the first time, there was peace.